I'm Kendra Cook, your host for today's DCTV News at Noon program out of Dove Creek, Colorado. The Dolores County Broadcasting Network is the producer of DCTV with support from the Southwest Colorado TV Translator Association, which is the special district association responsible for bringing the area free to access TV stations over the air by antenna. This is a community TV station. If there is a news story or event information that you would like to share, you can by calling us at 970-677-4119. If you're a business or organization, we welcome you to find out about sponsorship opportunities for banners or video segments to be run on the channel. This is the Friday program, which is aired at noon, 2 and 6 p.m. It is also available on demand online at both our YouTube channel and our DCTV News at Noon Facebook page. This is the program for January 10th, 2020, DCTV's News at Noon. From the Journal Jimimiaga photo and story. The San Juan National Forest has canceled an environmental analysis of a proposed motorized trail through the Sage Hen area after an active golden eagle's nest was discovered nearby. Because the eagle's nest is within a half-mile buffer zone required under Forest Service regulations to protect the bird, it prevents the motorized access proposal from moving forward, said Forest Recreation Manager Tom Rice. Quote, the Sage Hen Trail motorized proposal has been taken off the planning list at this point, he said. The nest is in an alcove on a cliff near the switchbacks that descend to the Dolores River. It was found by Forest Service biologists doing field work for the EA. Fresh feathers and whitewash confirm that it is active. Also, the nest was recently added onto by the eagle. Adding motorized use nearby would create a disturbance within the buffer, Rice said. The Forest Service does not want to consider authorizing a new action that may cause harm to the eagle, he said, which could violate the federal Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. Because of the topography, relocating the trail outside the half-mile buffer is seen as impractical. The Sage Hen Trail is currently open to non-motorized uses and is popular with hikers and equestrians. Limited motorized use is allowed for power line maintenance with access from a gate at McPhee Dam. Montezuma County had proposed that the Forest Service allow public motorized use on a 4.7-mile historic road through Sage Hen in order to provide access to Forest Road 504 below McPhee Dam. Making the trail open to ATVs and motorcycles from Memorial Day to Labor Day was envisioned as the beginning of a local link to the motorized Rim Rocker Trail that connects Montrose with Moab and goes through Nucleo. The idea is to add to the local economy by tapping into that multi-day backcountry adventure tours that are becoming more popular. As an alternative, planning is underway to link the county's portion of the Rim Rocker Trail link via the Boggy Draw network of OHV trails and roads. An economic plus would be recreationists would pass through Dolores on the way to the trailhead. Rice said that the Forest Service is evaluating a plan to widen current OHV routes from 50 inches to 62 inches to accommodate side-by-side off-highway vehicles that are becoming the norm. The Rim Rocker Spur route would begin at the Boggy Draw trailhead for the Powerline motorized route. It would then connect to other OHV trails and roads towards the Dolores County and San Miguel County portion of the trail and connect to the Rim Rocker Trail at Nucleo. Those counties are considering where their portion of the route might be located. Signs will direct trail users along the route, and phone apps could help guide them as well. The commissioners were open to the Forest Service looking into the local motorized Rim Rocker Spur beginning at Boggy Draw. County Natural Resource Director James Dietrich said ideally the new trail location would connect with the Bradfield Bridge on the Dolores River, so it would have economic benefits and access to nearby Dove Creek. Thank you, James Dietrich. The dropped Sage Hen environmental assessment for the motorized trail included a forest proposal to implement a seasonal closure for all uses at Sage Hen from December 1st to April 30th to protect critical big game winter habitat. Rice said that the Forest Service plans authorize the seasonal closure at Sage Hen, but it has not been implemented. It will be considered as part of the upcoming planning process for the proposed expanded OHV route at Boggy Draw for the Rim Rocker Spur. Also reported in the Journal and the Durango Herald with Photo AP. Tri-State Generation and Transmission, the energy supplier for Southwest Colorado, announced on Thursday it will close its coal-fired power plants in Colorado and New Mexico by 2030, a move that would help La Plata County Electric Association sharply reduce its dependence on carbon energy. LPEA approved a goal last year to reduce its carbon footprint by 50% from 2018 levels by 2030, while keeping its rates competitive. The goal seemed tough to achieve because LPEA is contracted to buy 95% of its power from heavily coal-invested Tri-State until 2050. Tri-State's decision to close its Escalante station near Pruitt, New Mexico by the end of 2020, and the Craig Station and Kalawoy mine in northwest Colorado by 2030 also would help both states reach carbon-cutting goals. With the closures, Tri-State will cut its coal emissions in Colorado and New Mexico by 100%, according to their news release. Quote, "That's a great step at the big picture level," said Mark Pearson, executive director of San Juan Citizens Alliance, a nonprofit that has advocated for greener power. Quote, "I think it confirms that we have been saying for the last few years, which is the days of coal are numbered. There are much cheaper and more appealing ways to generate electricity," he said. The Colorado legislature approved a measure in the spring to cut emissions 26% by 2025, 50% by 2030, and 90% by 2050 based on 2005 pollution levels. The closure also will cut LPEA's reliance on coal because LPEA receives about 53% of its power from Tri-State's coal power plants, that according to LPEA data. Tri-State CEO Dwayne Hiley said he expects the plan will not increase the rate co-ops pay for electricity because the cost of green energy has declined. Quote, "We continue to see dramatically reducing costs for wind and solar in our region," he said. Details about Tri-State's transition to renewable energy are expected next week. And reported by the Durango Herald, the prospect of gold brought hardy settlers to the San Juan Mountains, and soon after, Silverton had its share of legendary shootouts, high-stake holdups, and daring bouts of bootlegging. Sometimes justice was served, but as often, the bad guys got away. This fall, another chapter was added to Silverton's history, complete with an illegal scheme hatched to use railroad tracks for hunting purposes, threats to train employees, and an escape under the cover of darkness. "They had this grand plan," said San Juan County Sheriff Bruce Conrad, "and I feel like we've hit a dead end at this point." On October 19th, the San Juan County Sheriff's Office received a report that two men on the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad got off as planned at the Needleton stop, a popular place for people to exit the train and access remote parts of the Weminuche Wilderness to hike and hunt. After unloading an excessive amount of camping and hunting gear from the train, Conrad said one of the men, an 85-year-old, took off on foot into the back country, but his friend, who was in his late 40s, stayed behind and had other plans in mind. As the train pulled away, the man began building a retractable cart that was hidden in their gear, which attached to the train tracks to more easily transport the pair's heavy equipment to a campsite north of Needleton. Conrad said that the contraption was a typical game cart with a metal frame and wheels, commonly used by hunters to carry their kills out of the forest. This person, however, removed the wheels and specifically altered the cart to be hand-pulled and, even more impressively, fit the train's narrow-gauge tracks. Crody obviously figured out the measurements of the track and built this thing to suit, Conrad said. Not long into his journey, however, a DNS&G pop cart that follows behind every train looking for fires encountered the man and his cart going up the track. Quote, "The pop cart driver told the guy that's not legal," Conrad said. But the guy got really aggressive, started yelling, and seemed unstable. The pop cart driver, surmising the hunter was likely armed and fearing for his own safety, retreated from the situation and notified police. That's when the San Juan County Sheriff's Office became involved. Authorities learned the two men had a return ticket scheduled for 6 days later and determined the best way to catch them would be to take the train in and make contact with them on their way out. In the meantime, the two men's hijinks had a discernible impact on the DS&G, Conrad said. Trains were delayed because they had to run at half speed throughout the section where the men could be because the makeshift cart could be on the tracks and cause a crash. "No one should be on the tracks," said Kevin Martin, a spokesman with the DNS&G. "It does slow down our operations." Martin said people on the DNS&G tracks is a constant problem, but in recent memory, the situation with the makeshift cart has been unheard of, to say the least. On October 24th, 2 days before their scheduled ticket out of the San Juan Mountains, a pop cart driver saw the men's gear piled next to the tracks just north of Needleton. So officers staked out at the Rockwood station the next day, thinking the men were leaving earlier than expected. But they never showed. On October 26th, the day the men had a scheduled ticket out of Needleton, Conrad dressed in plain clothes and took to the train into the back country. But once again, the men had apparently vanished like the outlaws of old. To pull this escape in the middle of the night, the man in his 40s would have had to hand pull a cart full of gear and possibly a dead elk or deer about 15 miles over a mountainous narrow-gauge train track in complete darkness to Rockwood Station. And under this scenario, Conrad said it's likely the 85-year-old slipped onto the train the day before. Trying to solve the crime back at the office, authorities were able to determine the identity of the 85-year-old man who purchased the 2 train tickets. But when contacted by police, the man claimed not to know his companion, with whom he had spent 6 days or so in the wilderness. Authorities tried to check the video surveillance at the train depot, but there isn't any. It seems the only option one Conrad ultimately decided not to take would be to subpoena the man who lives in Pennsylvania. Unless we drag an 85-year-old man back to Silverton, it seems like it's another one that got away, he said. And now let's take a look at the local weather this weekend and into next week. Today, sunny with a high near 25 degrees, blustery with a north wind 15 to 20 miles an hour, and terrible gusts as high as 30 miles an hour. So any top blow snow that we received this morning is drifting. Fortunately, there was no significant local accumulation. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 8 degrees. West-northwest winds continue, but lessen to 5 to 10 miles an hour, becoming east-southeast after midnight. And for our weekend, there is still a slight chance for snow later on Saturday, sitting at about just 20%. Mostly sunny during the day with a high near 29. South winds 5 to 15 miles an hour. Saturday night, the 20% chance of snow showers remains in the forecast before 8 p.m. Mostly cloudy, and then a low around 10 degrees on the overnight. South winds around just 5 miles an hour, finally becoming calm in the evening. And again for Sunday, a 20% chance of snow showers after 11 a.m. Mostly sunny, though, through the day with a high near 29. Light east-southeast winds become south 5 to 10 miles an hour in the morning, and then the area storm that much of the mountain may be talking about for significant snow comes in Sunday night. Here we have just a 30% chance of snow showers around midnight Sunday, mostly cloudy with a low to 16 degrees. And then into Monday, we increase to a 40% chance for snow showers, partly sunny, and a high near 33 degrees. Monday night remains partly cloudy. Hopefully those clouds will be moving out of the area. We're looking for a low around 17 Monday, and into Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 35. But then Tuesday night, a slight chance of snow showers pops back in the picture after 11 p.m. Tuesday, partly cloudy with a low around 15 degrees. And that band of snow continues to linger into Wednesday with a chance of snow showers, but overall mostly sunny and a high near 34 degrees. And Wednesday night, mostly cloudy and a low of 18. And now back to the news. From the Durango Herald, Mary Shin photos. The new project to improve the health of 750,000 acres of forest in southwest Colorado could open new opportunities for the timber industry to harvest more wood and use it in non-traditional ways. As we reported in December, the Rocky Mountain Restoration Initiative recently received $50 million in funding to help mitigate wildfire risk and improve the health of the ecosystem through prescribed burning, forest thinning, logging, and other strategies, said Reed Armstrong, Communications Project Manager for that initiative. Decades of fire suppression have left the forests across southwest Colorado and much of the west overgrown and susceptible to catastrophic wildfires and beetles that can kill vast numbers of trees. The project is expected to include all the vegetation on the landscape, including species that aren't necessarily a focus of mitigation, such as aspen, she said. The initiative, a collaboration of 30 organizations, is expected to work across public, state, and private land over 10 years to improve the resiliency of forest along the U.S. Highway 160 corridor east and west of Durango. Businesses will be valuable partners in the initiative and could help come up with a model for using the wood harvested from the forest that could be economically sustainable long-term, said Ellen Roberts, a former state senator and a member of the initiative's steering committee. How to make forest thinning economically sustainable is, quote, the big question in the entire western U.S. Everybody is trying to figure it out, she said. But southwest Colorado is already using timber typically considered worthless in innovative ways. And she expects more small businesses could help lead the charge to find new uses for challenging timber, particularly trees and branches that are 10 inches in diameter or less and don't have commercial value in traditional markets, she said. If the area can find a way to manufacture products from the small diameter timber, it could help inform how forests are managed and across the state, Armstrong said. Southwest Colorado was chosen as the focus for the initiative in part because some small businesses are already pursuing creative solutions. J.R. Ford, owner of several timber businesses in Pagosa Springs, is building a facility to produce biochar, a product made from timber burned at very low temperatures that can be used as a soil amendment. The biochar is extremely porous, so it can absorb water and release it slowly and improve the natural biome in the soil. Quote, it creates housing and home condo projects for microbes, he said. The biochar can be made out of small diameter timber and branches that still have their needles attached. Ford said he expects to break ground on the new facility that will make charcoal briquettes and biochar this year. The plant could be making biochar by the end of the year. The large stands of beetle kill trees in Colorado also pose a challenge because the timber is traditionally considered trash by the timber industry, said David Sitton, co-owner of Aspen Wood Products and Aspen Wallwood in Montezuma County. However, companies in southwest Colorado are using it as decorative paneling and cross-laminated timber, a form of manufactured wood panels made by gluing 3 layers of wood with the layers oriented perpendicular to adjacent layers, Roberts said. Aspen Wallwood produces decorative paneling from the timber and ships it nationally and internationally, Sitton said. The combination of tree species dying and the type of beetle causing the deaths in this area produce a particularly desirable blue stain that has proved marketable, he said. If the Forest Service stays committed to timber sales, he expects the industry will grow in the area. The growth of the timber industry could also support more jobs, such as foresters, truck drivers, heavy equipment operators, electricians, and other positions requiring special training, Roberts said. She has started talking with local high schools and Pueblo Community College about what they would need to help prepare students for those roles. Preparing skilled labor is particularly important since many in the timber industry are approaching retirement age, she said. We're at the beginning of pulling the partners together and integrating seamless pathways for young people to seek careers in the Southwest. And more economic news, Region 9 speaks out on the Southwest Colorado economy outlook. Story and photo by Patrick Armijo with the Durango Herald. With the United States in its longest economic expansion ever, worry about when the next recession hits and how it might harm Southwest Colorado seem to be a shadow looming over the 28th annual Southwest Economic Outlook. Fortunately, quote, expansions don't die from old age, and while this expansion is the record longest, it's also been one of the weakest, said Sarah House, director and senior economist with Wells Fargo Securities. The Economic Outlook held this past Thursday in the Student Union Ballroom at Fort Lewis College brought together Richard Wobekind, Executive Director of the Business Research Division at the Leeds School of Business at the University of Colorado Boulder, Laura Lewis Machino, Executive Director of the Region 9 Economic Development District of Southwest Colorado, and House Wells Fargo top economist to examine the economic tea leaves leading into our new year. Both House and Wobekind see continued but slowing economic growth in 2020, with a recession unlikely in the next 12 months. Quote, we're calling for a growing but slowing economy, a non-recession scenario, Wobekind told several hundred people who gathered for the event. Last year, he said, he recorded 51,000 new jobs created in Colorado, and this year he sees an increase of 40,000 new jobs, consistent with his expectation for the economy to remain strong, albeit growing more slowly than in 2019. House examined 3 factors some economic observers suggest might lead to the next economic dry spell: an inversion of the yield curve, the national election, and increasing debt burdens on corporations and the federal government. However, House said none of those factors seem likely to be strong enough to throw the economy into reverse. The yield curve inversion, when short-term interest rates on debt exceed the rate for long-term debt, is a gauge economists watch as an early indicator of an oncoming recession. House said that the yield curve indeed inverted several times in 2019, the first occurrence being on August 27th. But she cautioned that the gauge does not necessarily coincide with a recession 100% of the time. Quote, I think there's reason this time to take it with caution, considering that the Fed has been through quantitative easing and has been trying to push down rates, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that the same thing that it used to, she said. Despite the partisan political bickering to be expected in presidential election years, House said economic contractions rarely occur during presidential elections. More typically, she said, presidential election years are associated with increased investments by businesses across the nation. Growing corporate and federal debt are at historic highs compared with the size of the economy. But again, House said that valid non-recessionary reasons exist for that as well. Quote, you have to bear in mind that assets are also at an all-time high, she said. We've seen a lot of the debt held long-term, locking in low interest rates. So with historically low rates, in some ways it makes sense for businesses to be taking out a little more debt at this time, given that it's so cheap. House said mounting federal debt is unlikely to be dealt with anytime soon, and while it might eventually trigger a crisis, no one knows when. The growing debt is on track to increase from 75% of annual gross domestic product to 95% of GDP, she said. So when does this all fall apart? Well, hard to say. You know, if you look at Japan, it could go on for a long while. The most likely principal impact of the growing debt, she said, is when the next recession hits, the government will have fewer resources to devote to discretionary spending to stimulate the economy. Marchino noted several, quote, thumbs-up factors that should aid Southwest Colorado's economy for 2020. New activity in logging, as we just reported on, to remove beetle-kill timber and to promote forest health. Strong support systems for entrepreneurs and small businesses. New creative districts to spur the arts in Durango, Ignacio, Silverton, and Mancos. Innovative farm-to-table agricultural enterprises. A vibrant, attractive area that attracts people working from home, retirees, and second homeowners. Marchino's thumbs down factors included an economy that continues to struggle in Farmington, higher than average suicide rates in Southwest Colorado, a lack of drug treatment and mental health facilities, higher health care costs compared with Colorado's average, gaps in telecommunications infrastructure, which we hope to see change here in 2021 for Dove Creek with fiber optic coming, and problems of supply of affordable housing for wage workers. And today, January 10th, 2020, it looks like nationally our Dow Jones index in the stock market may just break that $29,000 mark, setting yet another all-time high. And today's High Canyon Country happenings. Today, January 10th at 6 p.m., Mancos Brewing Company is stoked, quote, to host Last Nickel, the homegrown new grass band from Dolores. We have a real soft spot for these kick-ass musicians, and we think you ought to have one too, they say. Come on out and listen to the great music, hang out with your hometown friends, and get your groove on. January 11th, there is live music at Fenceline Cider in Mancos, starting at 7 p.m. La La Bones is coming back to Fenceline for an evening of original bluegrass music. And January 11th, the Southwestern Cowbells Chili Supper and Auction starts at 5 p.m. at the Louis Areola Community Center in Cortez. They will be auctioning a vintage Southwestern Cowbells quilt with many awesome old brands on it. You have to see it. Proceeds go to their scholarship fund, and donations are taken at the door for the Chili Supper. And a note to mark down next Thursday, January 16th in Dove Creek, the Community Voice is hosting a panel discussion on growing and processing hemp and the USDA interim final rule. It will run from 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Public Service Center, which is 8477 Road 7.7 in Dove Creek. And so if the future of hemp is something you've considered or are already a part of, it would be great to see a good turnout for this panel discussion and no doubt some Q&A. And I post up all of these High Canyon Country happenings on our Facebook page, which is DCTV News at Noon, where you can also watch the program replay along with news links and stories of local interest. And you too can share other events or news there and join in on the conversation. Again, this is your local community TV station, so if you have something you'd like to share, you can contact us by email, which is dcbnnews@gmail.com, or call the station at 970-677-4119. Thanks for tuning in to News at Noon. Programs are broadcast Monday through Friday with replays online on our YouTube channel or DCTV News at Noon on Facebook. If you like the program, please like us there and follow us on Facebook and share it with your friends and family. This has been a production of DCTV for the News at Noon program out of Dove Creek, Colorado, USA. I'm Kendra Cook. Again, thank you for tuning in.